You know, it's pretty amazing when you actually stop and think about it, this ability you have, this human capacity to build these, like, mental pictures of things you can't even see or touch directly.
Right. It's like an innate knack for abstract thought.
And that's exactly what we're diving deep into today. Your incredible ability to understand and create these abstract representations of the world around you.
Mhm.
We've got some really fascinating source material, including some compelling work from a cognitive scientist
Hmm.
doing some really groundbreaking research here.
It really is fundamental. I mean, it's how you learn, how you discover things. You use these, what you could call them cognitive tools.
Cognitive tools like mental shortcuts.
Yeah, often visual ones, diagrams, graphs, even just, rough sketches. They let you make sense of really complex information and, like you said, visualize things that are invisible otherwise.
And it's not just about aesthetics, is it? It's more fundamental.
Oh, absolutely. It's the bedrock of, well, scientific advancement, how complex ideas get shared effectively. And it's really at the core of your own learning process.
Okay, so in this deep dive for you, we're going to try and unpack how you actually perceive and make sense of these kinds of visual shorthand methods.
Yeah, and we'll look at how the context, the situation around a drawing influences how it's made and what you understand it to mean.
And we'll get into this really interesting distinction, too, between just a visual depiction, something that, tries to look like the real thing, and a visual explanation.
Right, something that's actually trying to show you the mechanics, how something works.
And it's a second part to this exploration, too, right?
That's right. Later on, we'll focus more on the cognitive foundations of data visualization. How do you understand charts and graphs?
Okay. And also the challenges in getting AI to do this.
Exactly. Big challenges in building AI systems that can understand and, importantly, generate these visual abstractions with the kind of flexibility that you have.
All right, let's kick things off then with just the sheer power of this visual abstraction for you. You mentioned cognitive tools. Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about something really basic, like the number line.
Okay, yeah, just a line with numbers.
Right, but you didn't just stumble across that in nature, did you? It's a human invention.
Uh-huh.
But it completely revolutionized how you think about and work with numbers. Same with Cartesian coordinates, that grid system.
Right, X and Y axis from school.
Yeah. These are abstract frameworks, tools we built that unlocked totally new ways for you to understand space and relationships.
And it's amazing how you can connect these seemingly simple tools to, like, really huge moments in science.
Definitely. Take Darwin and his finches. It wasn't just his observations.
It was the drawings.
It was John Gould's incredibly detailed illustrations. They were the things that really brought those subtle but crucial differences in beak shapes into sharp focus for everyone, seeing them side by side.
Ah, it made the patterns obvious.
Exactly. Made the evolutionary connections much clearer.
Or, Galileo. His telescope was amazing, but just seeing faint lights wasn't the whole story.
No, it was his drawings, his meticulous sketches tracking Jupiter's moons over time. That was the visual proof.
The visual argument, yeah.
Yeah.
That challenged everything people thought they knew about the solar system.
And fast forward a bit, you have Ramon y Cajal. His drawings of the retina seen through a microscope. Just stunningly detailed.
Revolutionary, right? Showed the structure of the nervous system.
In a way words just couldn't capture, made them microscopic visible and understandable, still informs us today.
And we can't forget Feynman diagrams in physics.
Oh, yeah. Those little lines and squiggles.
Representing things you can literally never see subatomic particles interacting.
But those visual tools have been absolutely critical for your understanding of, well, the fundamental building blocks of everything.
So the common thread through all these examples, Darwin's finches, Galileo's moons, Cajal's neurons, Feynman's particles, is this idea of visual abstraction.
Precisely. They aren't perfect copies. They're carefully designed representations. They highlight what's important for understanding that specific thing.
They filter out the noise.
Right. Emphasize the key signals.
And this is where it gets really powerful for you, isn't it? Because once you have that deeper, more abstract understanding,
Then you can apply it. You can start re-engineering the physical world.
right, your understanding of biology leads to bioengineering. Physics knowledge lets you build incredible instruments.
Neuroscience informs medical devices. Quantum mechanics underpins all our modern electronics.
It's this amazing cycle, right?
Right.
Understand abstractly, then build concretely, all driven by these cognitive tools.
And that ability to go from abstract insight to practical application, that's really a hallmark of human ingenuity, isn't it? It's not just passive observation, it's active creation.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little. How do you actually understand these things in the first place? Like you see a simple line drawing, maybe just a few strokes, and you instantly know, oh, that's a cat or that's a house.
Right. Seems effortless.
But what's actually happening in your brain?
Well, that's a classic question, you know. There have been sort of two main camps. One idea is simple resemblance. The drawing looks enough like the real thing. The lines trigger your visual system similarly.
Makes intuitive sense.
The other view is that it's mostly learned conventions. Like, through experience, you learn that this particular squiggle means cat.
So like learning a visual alphabet.
Kind of. But what's interesting is the recent research using AI, using these big neural networks trained on photos.
Yeah. What does that show?
Well, these systems, even though they only ever saw realistic photos during training, they can often generalize pretty well to really sparse sketches.
Huh. So that supports the resemblance idea.
It suggests a sort of modern take on it. It's not about photographic likeness, maybe, but about capturing key visual features that your brain and these AIs are tuned into.
And wasn't there work specifically mapping sketch parts to photo parts, like showing the structure lines?
Exactly. Work with Charles Liu showed you can map elements even with distortions, suggesting there are strong spatial constraints. The arrangement of parts in the sketch corresponds meaningfully to the arrangement in the real object.
Okay, so resemblance, or at least structural similarity, plays a big part. But, context is obviously huge, too.
Oh, absolutely. Think about diagrams on a whiteboard. Blobs and arrows.
Totally meaningless without the conversation around them.
Right. So researchers set up this clever drawing game to get at that. People had to sketch an object, but sometimes the other objects on screen, the distractors, were very similar, and sometimes they were very different.
So forcing them to be more or less specific depending on the context.
Exactly. And guess what happened?
They drew differently.
Big time. When distractors were similar, people drew much more detailed, careful sketches. Makes sense, right? You need to disambiguate.
Yeah, you need to make it clear which one you mean.
But when the distractors were really different, they could get away with much simpler, much more abstract sketches. Fewer strokes, less ink, less time.
But still got the message across.
Yep, communication accuracy stayed high. So the detail level wasn't just about the object itself, but about distinguishing it within that specific visual context.
And they built a model for this, too.
Yeah.
A computational model.
They did. It had sort of two parts. A convolutional neural net for the visual abstraction piece,
The resemblance part.
and then a probabilistic decision-making module to handle the context sensitivity.
And the takeaway was?
You need both. You need that basic visual abstraction ability, and you need that sensitivity to context to communicate efficiently. It's always a balance.
That makes perfect sense for you. You naturally adjust how much detail you give based on how much is needed.
And there was even follow-up work showing how, shared history between people can lead to even more abstract conventions. Your own little shorthand develops over time.
Like an inside joke, but visual.
Kind of, yeah. A few lines can mean a lot if you share the context.
Okay, so we're getting a handle on recognizing depictions and the role of context. But what about using visuals to show how things work? Mechanistic knowledge.
Right, moving beyond just what it looks like to how it functions.
That seems like a different challenge.
It is, and this is where Holly Huey's work comes in. She asked, what actually makes a diagram an explanation versus just a depiction?
Interesting question. What were the competing ideas?
She laid out two main hypotheses. First, the cumulative hypothesis.
Okay.
That basically says an explanation is just a depiction with more stuff added. You show what it looks like, then you add arrows, labels, details about the mechanism.
So depiction plus mechanics, explanation.
Pretty much. The second idea was the dissociable hypothesis.
Dissociable, meaning separate.
Yeah. This view suggests explanations and depictions are fundamentally different visual strategies. Explanations prioritize the core mechanics, the causal parts, how they interact.
And they might even downplay the appearance.
Exactly. De-emphasize exact visual look to make the function clearer. More about the how than the what.
Okay, so how did she test this? I heard something about novel contraptions.
Yes. She designed these neat little physical gadgets with observable mechanisms. Crucially, they had different kinds of parts. Well, there were causal parts, the bits that actually made the machine work, like a key lever. Then non-causal parts that looked similar but didn't do anything functionally. And then just background structural parts holding it together.
Clever. And then people drew them.
Right. Two different instructions. Group 1, draw this to explain how it works. Group 2, draw this so someone else can identify it later.
directly pitting explanation against depiction goals.
Exactly. A clean way to see if people change their drawing strategy based on the goal.
And they analyze the drawings in detail, line by line.
Yep, using crowdsourcing. Lots of people tagged every single line. Was it representing a causal part, non-causal background? Or was it a symbol, like an arrow showing motion?
Wow, that's thorough. What did the analysis show? Cumulative or dissociable?
The findings really strongly supported the dissociable hypothesis for you.
How so?
The explain drawings dedicated significantly more ink, more strokes to the causal parts, and they used way more symbols like arrows showing movement or interaction.
And the depict drawings.
They focused much more on the background, the overall shape and structure, so people really do seem to shift strategy. Prioritize function for explaining, prioritize appearance for identifying.
Okay, so the drawings look different. But did they function differently? Did the explanations actually help people understand better?
Crucial follow-up question. So Holly ran 3 inference tasks using these drawings.
Okay.
1, can you figure out the action needed to make the machine work? 2, can you use the drawing to identify the correct object from a lineup? And 3, can you identify the key causal part from the drawing?
And the results?
Pretty clear cut. The explanation drawings were much better for figuring out the action, how the mechanism worked.
Made sense.
The depiction drawings were, as you'd expect, better for just identifying the object visually.
Also makes sense. What about identifying the causal part? Were explanations better for that?
Interestingly, no. Explanations weren't significantly better at helping people pinpoint the exact causal component.
Huh. Why do you think that is?
It suggests maybe a trade-off. When you abstract to show the overall function, you might lose some of the fine-grained visual detail of individual parts.
So abstracting for function might obscure specific component details sometimes. Interesting trade-off.
It seems so, but the big takeaway is that you seem to have these shared intuitions about what makes a good visual explanation, even without explicit training.
And your goal explain versus depict really drives how you choose to abstract the information visually.
Exactly. Communicative context and goals are absolutely key.
Right. Which brings us back to AI. Can we build systems that have this nuanced, context-sensitive, goal-driven ability for visual abstraction?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a huge hurdle for building genuinely useful AI, especially for science or complex modeling.
And there's a benchmark specifically for this now.
SEVA.
Yes, the SEVA benchmark. It's designed explicitly to pose these challenges. How robust is an AI to sparsity, like in a quick sketch? How well does it tolerate semantic ambiguity, where a few lines could mean different things? And they collected tons of drawings for this, under time pressure.
Yeah, about 90,000 hand-drawn sketches of 128 different concepts. And critically, people drew them under varying production budgets, different time limits.
To get that range from detail to super quick sketches.
Exactly, mimicking real-world sketching.
So how did the AI stack up against humans at recognizing these sketches?
Well, first, perhaps unsurprisingly, sketches made with more time were easier for both humans and AI models to recognize. They were less ambiguous.
Okay.
But while some models did okay, there was still a pretty significant performance gap overall between the best AI systems and humans.
Humans are just better at getting the gist from a rough sketch.
Generally, yes. And interestingly, even when models got it right, their uncertainty patterns often didn't match human uncertainty. They might be confident when a human is hesitant, or vice versa, suggests a different underlying process.
So it's not just about accuracy, but how they arrive at the answer and their confidence in it.
Precisely. It hints that current AI, despite progress, might lack some fundamental aspects of your visual interpretation and abstraction abilities.
What about AI generating sketches, like Cielo Paso?
Yeah, they looked at that too. Compared human sketches to AI-generated ones from models like Cielo Paso under similar constraints, even when the AI sketches were roughly equally recognizable to humans.
Okay.
The way the AI chose to simplify or sparsify the drawing, especially under tight time limits, was often quite different from how humans do it.
So different strategies to achieve recognizability. We prioritize different features when we're rushing a sketch compared to how an algorithm might.
It seems that way. It highlights, again, these unique cognitive strategies you employ during visual abstraction. The hope is this SEVA benchmark pushes the field toward AI that thinks more like you do visually.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've covered drawing, sketches, explanations. Let's pivot to another huge area of visual abstraction, data visualization.
Ah, yes. Charts, graphs. Incredibly powerful cognitive tools for you, especially now.
In this age of just data overload.
Absolutely. Real-world observations, raw data, it's rarely clean or obvious, is it? Data visualizations, bar charts, line graphs, scatter plots they act like cognitive telescopes or microscopes.
How so?
They help you see structures and patterns in information that might be too massive or too noisy or just unfolds too slowly for you to grasp directly from the raw numbers.
You need that visual summary to make sense of it all.
Exactly. Think back to William Playfair, way back in the late 1700s.
The inventor of the bar chart and line graph.
One of the pioneers, yeah. His time series plot showing England's imports and exports over decades
Just one picture showing all that complex data.
revealed trends and relationships that would be incredibly hard to spot in just tables of figures. A classic example of making the invisible visible through abstraction.
But unlike recognizing, say, a sketch of a cat, understanding a graph isn't automatic, is it? You have to learn how to read it.
That's a critical point for you. It's like learning a new language. You need to understand the axes, the scales, what the bars or points or lines represent.
Graph literacy.
Exactly. It's a skill you develop, but once you have it, it's incredibly powerful for distilling information and, importantly, updating your beliefs based on evidence. That's why it's so vital in STEM education and beyond.
So what do we know about the underlying operations? What's your brain doing when you look at a scatter plot and see a correlation or compare bars in a chart?
Well, researchers are digging into this, often by comparing human performance to AI systems on standardized tests of graph reasoning.
Like the SEVA benchmark, but for graphs.
Sort of, yeah. Tests like GGR, VLET, ChartQA. They probe different aspects, from just reading values to identifying complex trends or comparing distributions.
And what are those comparisons showing? Are AIs catching up on graph understanding?
There's still generally a meaningful gap between human performance and even advanced AI models like GPT-4V across most of these tests.
Tell gap.
Yes. And again, like with sketches, the error patterns are often different. Even when an AI gets the right answer, the mistakes it makes along the way don't look very human-like.
Suggesting it's using different internal processes, maybe brittle ones.
Potentially. It highlights that true, flexible graph understanding involves more than just pattern matching. It's about grasping the encoded relationships and drawing robust inferences.
Okay, so that's understanding graphs someone else made. What about choosing the right graph? If you have data, how do you decide? Bar, line, scatter.
Another really interesting area of research for you, studies look at how people select plots to answer specific questions.
And what guides that choice?
One compelling idea is the audience-sensitive hypothesis.
Audience sensitive,
Yeah.
meaning you think about who's going to see it.
Exactly. It suggests your choice isn't just about what helps you see the pattern, but what plot you predict will best help your intended audience understand the key point or answer the question accurately and efficiently.
Huh. So it's a communicative act, thinking about the viewer's cognition.
Precisely. And human choices in these studies seem to align well with that hypothesis. You optimize for the viewer's understanding.
Fascinating. Lastly, how do we even measure this graph understanding skill reliably? You mentioned looking critically at existing tests.
Yeah, researchers took tests like GGR and VLET, gave them to large, diverse samples of people.
What do they find?
They found, well, some consistency in which questions were harder or easier, but the analysis suggested these tests might be measuring fairly similar underlying skills. Performance wasn't strongly tied to specific plot types or question types in the way you might expect.
So the traditional categories, reading bars, interpreting lines, might not be the best way to think about the underlying skills.
That's what the analysis hinted at. A more complex statistical model with 4 underlying factors actually predicted people's error patterns better than grouping by plot type or question type.
Implying our current ways of thinking about graph skills might be incomplete.
Potentially, yeah. It's basically a call to action for the field. We need to develop better, more nuanced ways to measure data visualization understanding for you.
Okay, so wrapping this all up for you, it seems incredibly clear that you, humans, have this remarkable, really multifaceted ability to create and understand visual abstractions.
Absolutely. Doodles, complex diagrams, data visualizations. These cognitive tools are just fundamental to how you learn, discover, and communicate.
And we've seen this interplay between Your basic perception, the context,
Yeah.
your goals.
Right. How depiction differs from explanation, the challenges AI faces in mimicking this, and the complexities in understanding and even choosing data
And
visualizations.
the research continues, which feels really important.
Oh, definitely. It infects education, how we foster data literacy, ultimately how you make sense of an increasingly complex world.
Which leads to maybe a final thought for you, the listener. Just take a moment to consider how this ability you have to abstract, to visualize how it shapes not just your understanding, but your capacity to innovate, to solve problems.
Yeah, think about those moments in your own life, maybe sketching something out, looking at a chart, just forming a mental image. When did a visual give you that aha moment, that sudden insight?
That flash of understanding is powerful. And speaking of powerful solutions for complex systems and data, we do want to give a shout out to Stonefly.
Right. Stonefly is a real pioneer in areas like SAN, NAS, and S3 object-compatible storage, plus backup and disaster recovery, cloud solutions, and even advanced AI and security tech.
They offer a really impressive range of advanced data services. Things like immutable snapshots, crucial for ransomware protection, strong AES 256 encryption for data security, both synchronous and asynchronous replication for business continuity.
Intelligent tiering to manage costs, smart flash caching for performance boosts, and they even have patented immutable and air-gapped backup options for ultimate security.
And it's worth noting Stonefly received the DCIG award, recognized as a top 5 storage company across SAN, NAS, and object storage. That's quite an achievement.
It really is. So if you're looking at enhancing data protection, scaling storage, boosting performance, maybe doing an infrastructure refresh, or exploring hyperconverged options for platforms like VMware or Hyper-V, Stonefly offers solutions that are known for being affordable and having excellent support.
You can check them out at stonefly.com. That's STONEFLY.com, or email their sales team, sales@stonefly.com.
And they have a pretty compelling promo this month. You can get immutable and air-gapped backup starting at just $10. Or for larger needs, inquire about their 70 terabyte backup and DR appliance.
Wow, 70 terabytes expandable up to 4 petabytes, featuring that object lockdown technology for ransomware protection, all for $700. That's impressive. Email sales@stonefly.com for details on that offer.
Definitely worth looking into if you're managing complex data needs. But bringing it back to our main topic, we really hope you continue thinking about these ideas for yourself.
Yeah, consider how you use visual abstraction in your own learning, your work, your daily life.
It's a truly powerful human ability, making the invisible visible. And understanding it better might just help you think and communicate more effectively.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for taking this deep dive with us today. Until next time, keep those mental models working and keep visualizing your world.